To everyone who is joining us this morning. We're just going to allow a small bit of time to make sure that everyone who is jumping on is in. So just bear with us a moment, but we're hoping that you're all having a lovely start to your day so far. Very much coming in the run up to Christmas. It's come too quickly. And that's the usual chat I do whilst we're waiting for people to join the session. So we're just going to give it a minute or so before we kick off with Take Control of SEN Recruitment. Okay. Okay. Fabulous. Okay. Right then, we will get started, and then anyone else who's coming in, of course, will join us. So again, welcome to those who are joining us this morning for our webinar, Take Control of SEN Recruitment, Proven Moves to Secure and Keep the Right Staff, hosted by myself, Marianne, and we have the lovely Preeti here. Preeti, give us a wave. I'm the head of resourcing and marketing here, and we have Preeti, who is our associate operations manager. So I will be talking through it's all aspects of taking control of your SEN recruitment through this session. I'll be asking Preeti some key questions that can help basically, as we're saying, secure and keep the right staff. So we are hoping the session will be about half an hour long. We do hope there will be some time at the end for questions as well. We're going to see how we get on. So I'm going to bounce to our first slide now. Here we go. Right, so we're going to start off by talking about working in sync with your agency. And I think just to give some context to this as well, we know that all schools obviously engage with a recruitment agency to help support their SEN recruitment. It's something that's become unavoidable. It's something that we know has increased in terms of our level of relationships and the number of schools that we work with across SEN schools, mainstream, and even into nurseries as well. We are very, very active in terms of the recruitment that we do across SEN roles, and this has changed a lot since and then during and then since COVID as well. So we're going to start off by talking about working in sync with your agency because of this, being a given at this point. So Preeti, can I ask you what working in sync with an agency looks like to you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the main things is clear communication. I think it's so important to make sure that you are communicating effectively, whether it's daily, weekly, monthly. I know obviously some schools don't have the time to speak to us daily, which is absolutely fine, but I think there needs to be back and forth communication about what you need and what you don't need. I think also what's really important is just making sure that we are in line with what you need. So for example, if you need a certain person for a specific class, I think it'd be lovely for us to know. Sometimes it is a bit of a guessing game if we just get told we need a TA. So it'd be really lovely to get some more information about the type of person that would be great with that specific child, or if there's any HCP attached. I think also it's just so important for us to understand what that child needs, or the specific cohort of children, what they need, because we don't want to obviously waste anybody's time. I think agencies sometimes are a bit scared of asking questions, but it absolutely should not be. I know, Marianne, we ask quite a lot of questions when we are given a position, but it's one of those things, we want to get it right the first time, not the second time, not the third time. So that's one of the reasons that we do ask so many questions the first time round. I think also just making sure that if our communication is open and consistent, that we are then able to respond to last minute things as well. We understand things happen. We understand people call in sick. We are dealing with humans. So we obviously want to make sure that, the schools are able to contact us. So most agencies are open early in the morning. And, we are able to support during the morning as well. But also if there's a certain day, so for example, I know that there's a specific school that I work with, and their most busy days are Thursdays and Fridays. But then on the other hand, one of my schools, they're really busy on a Monday, and then they're really quiet on Tuesday and Wednesday. So it's just sort of predicting that. And I think over the years, you become in sync with with the school, and you can sort of start like predicting when things are going to happen. So one of my schools likes to have people on standby every Friday, because he knows that we'll probably call in sick, which to be honest works really, really well for them because it's the same people. So I think that is really important to work in sync with the schools, and also just planning jointly. I think, you know, it has to be a collaboration. We have to work in sync and we have to work as a team. I think that should just be sort of a normal thing that you do with your agency.
Yeah.
Predicting stuff. If you know someone's, you know, a maternity is coming up, for example, letting your agency know well in advance so that they can almost, you know, start finding someone in the background for you. And that should just become like a normal thing, not something that is a bit alien to you. At the beginning, it might feel a bit weird that somebody else knows so much about your school, but it quickly should become normal, to be honest.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, excellent. Well, that leads on really nicely for me to ask you about why partnership matters. So obviously we've talked here about working in sync, and that getting results from that will result in working in partnership. And it's important that all parties are understanding why this matters and the difference that it makes as well. So Preeti, for you, what does the partnership approach, how does it make such a difference? Why is it so important?
I think it's so important because we want to make sure that we get the right candidates for the right pupils. Essentially, you know, we're all here to support the pupils and we want to make sure that they're getting absolutely the right support, whether it's, you know, a secondary SEN class, whether it's a nursery class, whether it's early years. We want to make sure that we get it right the first time round. Like I said, if we don't have the right criteria of what you need, it's going to be really, really difficult for us to sort of match to the right role. I know we're going to talk about this a little bit later on as well, but, you know, with the candidate generation team, you know, they lead with the roles that are given to us from the schools and they talk to candidates about the specifics of the role. We don't absolutely need to know everything about a child's EHCP or anything like that, but I think it's more so the fact that we'd like to know whether they have particular sensory needs, whether you would like someone with a particular background, or you know that a specific personality works with them. I think that sort of stuff really helps us to match to the role that you've given us, or roles. And I think that means that you have less people dropping out, you have less people leaving the role, and you have more continuity, obviously, for the students as well, which is exactly what we're here for. It should also mean that you don't have to do so many off the hook sort of, you know, short-term hires where you're thinking, oh my God, I need someone in yesterday. And I think that happens often. I needed someone yesterday because so-and-so let me down. We want to obviously try to avoid that. So if you have a good flow of staff coming in, whether it's for daily or, you know, weekly cover, it means that actually you should be able to go back to your agency and say, last week I had somebody in on Wednesday and Thursday. I've actually now got a slot for them because a role's come up, and that person already knows your school and that person already knows, you know, the way that you like them to work. That also should mean that in the long term you get more stability, and I think that obviously means that, you know, you have less turnover. I think especially in a SEN context, I think there is a lot of turnover. I think, you know, we have to be quite honest. You know, candidates do find the environment sometimes very tough, but we do a great job in prepping the candidate, and we'll go on to that a little bit further on. But I think the prep is really important, and making sure that we are all on the same page. So from a school perspective and the agency perspective, we just need to know everything about the role so that we can prepare the candidates so they don't obviously you know, fall out after a week or 2 weeks of trying the role. And I think one of the other things that has really worked for me over the years, and I know some of my schools are on this at the moment, and I know that they will know that I'm just a normal face coming into their schools, and it becomes a normal thing. You know, your agency comes in and visits, you know, gets to know the pupils, gets to know the staff members. You know, one of my schools, I know every single class, pretty much every single cohort in those classes as well. I know the names of the classes. So when they say I need a long-term TA for a specific class, I say, oh, I know exactly who would be a really great fit for that. And it means that you get greater stability as well. So us asking those sorts of questions are not there to annoy any of the schools at all. It's more so that we can obviously build stability, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Excellent. And I think what that comes with, you know, with that partnership as well, and you've touched on this, and it's going to lead, you know, into the next bit as well, is then that partnership creates priority. doesn't it, for
Absolutely.
for the schools that we work with, for the candidates that we work with, when we can work so much in sync that it builds a partnership, which can take some time, but it all, as long as we start off in the right way and are in sync, we can ensure that we're prioritizing the schools we work with, the candidates that are most suitable, because we can work in that way. And that's what I see Preeti do all day, every day. So good stuff. Thank you. Okay, so on to smarter SEN recruitment. So when we talk about this, it's not rocket science, we know that, but it is about taking the right steps and ensuring that we recruit, obviously, the right candidates, that our teams collaborate to ensure this, from resourcing, who is our candidate generation team, to compliance, to our school consultants. So in terms of how we do things, Preeti, what does smarter SEN recruitment look like at Envision?
Yeah, I think for us specifically, it is getting the details of the role. So I know, when I go over to you guys, over to the candidate generation team, I'm very specific about the roles that we've got. We tell you about the schools. Sometimes you guys come on visits with us, and I think that's absolutely amazing. And pretty much unheard of, because you guys need to be able to speak about the schools just as passionately as we are. And what we tend to speak to the candidates about the specific role, not just about a school that might have a position in the near future. We tend to talk about the here and the now and what the school needs right now. Or we might be doing it a little bit in advance, and we might be saying, there's a maternity coming up, or there's a position coming up from January. I think a lot of schools already are talking about what they may need for January. One of my really lovely special schools, they're in the middle of moving, and he's already told me how many new starters he will need in January. And I think if I didn't have a relationship, and if we didn't, work in sync with each other, I wouldn't be able to sort of already, send people in for interviews and trials. So that sort of side of it is already sorted. So I think we tend to go in very much tailored to what the school needs. I think also just assessing what the candidate is like. We have these conversations daily, Marianne, where we talk about, it's not just about the experience, it's about their personalities. And I know we ask a lot of sort of specific questions about what they've done in the past and how they've dealt with specific situations, because, I think the experience is all well and good, but I think we need to understand them and their motivation and why they're looking for a new role, and how long they will stay at the school, because ultimately that's what we're here for. We're here to build stability in the school, and we don't just want to fill a gap for now. We want to fill that gap hopefully forever. Oh, just book them in forever. And I'm like, okay, it doesn't quite work like that, but we're hoping to obviously fill that gap so that that person eventually moves over to your permanent members of staff, and then that creates stability within the school, rather than just a constant turn and churn of new staff members, because again, that doesn't really support the children in any way. And that turnover we want to make sure is reducing in our special schools especially, but I'm finding that this is happening in mainstream schools as well. They're having someone in for a week and they're not the right fit. So I think getting the things right at the beginning is really, really important.
Absolutely. Okay, well that goes on completely onto the next section, which I'm going to talk about for a little bit, is about the candidate experience. So I am the lead for our candidate generation team here, and what that means, our team spend all day every day sourcing brilliant candidates for our schools, and Preeti's touched on this already. The more information we have to speak to candidates who've applied for the role, or whether we have gone on to find them on CV searching sites, whether we are having conversations with referrals, whether we're doing something through our social media, the more information we have about a school and a role, the more engaged a candidate will be. So we love it when Preeti comes over and talks to us about a role, and what the type of candidate that will suit. We love going on visits, and that experience really rings true when we're speaking to our candidates. We do that with confidence. It gives the candidates confidence as well. Now, particularly as we know, with the high need for SEN recruitment, we want to explore candidates with all different backgrounds, where we know there can be value added and relevant experience there as well. So it isn't just simply a tick box exercise. We do think about different backgrounds, different skills, different hobbies, interests, right across the board. And it's really important we do that, because we have to ensure we get the best picture of the candidate as soon as possible, and that we can screen accordingly. We go above and beyond to assess them, particularly for send. It takes up a big part of our registration process, our interview, from our initial call through our application forms, and then also when we're on our registration meeting with them too. So once we've had all these conversations and we've checked everything that we need to, we then pass them on to our compliance team. So we continue the journey with them, and our compliance team, of course, manages all the essential safeguarding and vetting checks that are required for them to work in a school, and also presents them with the essential training courses that they need to complete as well. So the candidates that we have remain engaged, and we have a very fast turnaround. I'm always impressed by this. I've worked with a few agencies in my time and envision that turnaround is absolutely brilliant, and that really comes from the collaboration from resourcing to compliance and then with the schools consultants as well. So once we've got all those checks in as quickly as possible, and we've vetted, as we've said that we have done, our consultants have also spoken to the candidates that are coming through, they are then ready to go out to schools, and we continue to engage our candidates right from that very first call. Right, well, I could go forever, seeing as that's how we'd love to do things, but right until that sort of final placement that they might have with us. And it's really important that we do that. Again, it means that we are recruiting smartly. It means that we are being competitive within a difficult market, and we are presenting the right candidates to schools. We've popped just a snippet there of one of our Google reviews. We're very, very proud of our Google reviews, because what we can see is that they really highlight the experience that a candidate has had with us as well as with the school. As you can see here, if you're looking for to get into SEND teaching roles, definitely recommend Envision, and Preeti, the best consultant I've worked with across all agencies I've tried. Her communication has been consistently clear, supportive, and genuinely helpful. And these reviews mean so much to us because they really guide what we do and remind us that that's what we're doing as well. And we're doing it for the best outcomes for the candidates and for the schools and ultimately the pupils as well. So that's the candidate experience that we're all about, that we want to give our candidates, and that really matters, because that means that we get, as I say, great candidates for your school. We're going to move on now to talk about the candidate experience from a school perspective. So Preeti, from your side of things, and I'm sure you've got examples as well where the candidates have had great experiences and maybe not so, and it can be quite difficult for schools to manage that. So from your side, what do you feel would be, is a good candidate experience that they will have going into a school, and what can schools do to ensure that?
Yeah, I think it's really important to just make sure that, we've got clear expectations right from the start. So one thing obviously that we do before we send a candidate into a school, we do, give them a whole overview about the role, what class they'll be working with, if we know the name of the class, the needs of the class, what their role will entail, we tell them to be proactive, all of that sort of stuff. But I think when they're in the school, that's where we obviously stop holding their hand, and we do need to pass them over to the school directly. I think the schools that I work with, that it works really, really well with, is I have a really lovely special school that does a really lovely induction for them. So on the first day, the candidates go in actually 15 or 20 minutes early. They'll do a health and safety check. They'll show them around, show them where, just small things, show them where the bathroom is, show them where the staff room is, show them where the fire exit is, in case of an emergency, go here. I think those sorts of things really, really help. And I completely understand that some schools don't have time for that. But ask your agency to get the staff members to come in early. I have absolutely no problems. And our candidates do never have any problems going in early because they're being prepared. I think the worst thing that we can do is send in a candidate and they don't know what they're doing. And obviously, we do say to the candidates to make sure that they're going in with a lot of time so that they can go in and speak to the class teacher. And if there is a handover, read the handover. And if there's not, then ask some questions about the children's EHCPs that they're going to be working with. I think that's really important. So giving them information. I have some really lovely schools who give the candidates, a little picture of the children, and then they have all of their needs. If they've got sensory needs, what they like, what they don't like, and they have it on, little laminated pouches, and they give it to the staff members when they come in. And I think that is invaluable. It just means that the candidates are aware of what they're doing. Another one of my schools, what they've done is the induction pack that they give the candidates when they come in, so the safeguarding stuff that they get them to read, and the health and safety stuff, they've actually sent it to me. So what we've done is we've incorporated it into the booking confirmation. So as soon as we've sent over the vetting to the school, the candidate also gets a confirmation, and they also get that all of that safeguarding stuff. They
Yeah.
also get, you know, the prep that essentially you're going to get them to sit in reception and read it. But what we can do is we can send it to them the night before, if you've told us the night before or the morning of. We can actually just get them to read it in advance. So a lot of my candidates will just read it on the bus on the way in, and they are completely ready to go. So that helps your agency to make sure that the candidates are prepped. So even if you don't have a lot of time to do an induction, you've already got us to do that for you, and we can go through that. And I think that's super important for the candidates, because the last thing that we want to do is throw the candidates straight into the classroom and they have no idea what they should be doing, what children they should be working with. Our candidates have no problems coming in early, so please do just ask your agency. It's not something that anybody really should have any reservations with, unless obviously you've placed a booking at 8 o'clock and you really need somebody to be there for, you know, 8:30. It may well happen, but it doesn't happen very often. I think, you know, the schools that we work in sync with, they generally can tell us when they're going to need people, so that means that, you know, we can prep the candidates well in advance, but then you kind of have a gist of it when you're you know, the person at the front desk generally already knows, oh, this person's coming from Envision, this is what they know, this is what they don't know, and this is what I need to go through. You know, let me give them the right land map, let me show them where everything is. So, you know, I think that really sets the candidate up to have a nice day. It's really important that, you know, the candidates are prepared and they know what they're going to be doing for that day. It just means that if they're having a nice day, it means that your pupils will have equally a very nice day, and obviously it means that their learning is not wasted for the day, and that's the main thing. We want to make sure that if you have a supply member of staff in, that's not a wasted day. That person should come in and hit the ground running straight away. It shouldn't be, you know, that they're sort of standing around observing. That's not what we've sent them in for. They need to be proactive and they need to get involved, and that's how we obviously prepare our candidates. And I think it just means that there's consistency as well. So if we can do that across the board with all of our special schools or primary schools or secondary schools that need SEND staff, there's consistency. Whether the candidate goes to 4 different schools in one day or whether they go to one school throughout the week, they sort of know what is expected of them, and actually they do get better and better as they go along. And they bring new skills to you. You know, if you're just booking for a day, they may have learned something amazing in the school that they went to the day before, and you're bringing in people that are already skilled, and that's the main thing that we want to do. We want to upskill the staff members that you've got. Some of your permanent staff members might even learn a thing or two, because, you know, they may not have gone to any other schools, they may not have seen anything else, so the agency staff members can come in and bring new skills in, and you know, that happens all the time. So I think it is really, really important that from a school's perspective that they are aware of who's coming in and what class they're going to be in, and you're just organized. But like I said, it doesn't happen like that all the time. Things don't work like clockwork, and we completely understand that. And most candidates we prepare them well enough, don't we, Marianne? And we do say things don't go switch down. We might say you're in one class, but you might not be in that class, so please be aware that you might have to swap over. So we do prepare them like that as well.
We definitely do. That's one thing we always say, and you say, Preeti, is telling the candidates to treat the job that they've already got the job. And I think that's kind of then what we're trying to say from their experience being within the school, that they need to feel like that. And the more that they feel like that themselves, and they can see themselves working in the school, the more, you know, likely they are to want to come back, or then potentially then come back into a specific position. So it's taking every opportunity when a school is being presented with a candidate to make the most of it where they can. Again, we know it isn't always perfect, but it does make the difference. And especially when we are and we need to go above and beyond to find candidates with different experiences who then might have some relevant experience, but they need to build on it. We want these candidates to grow, we want their skills to develop, and that's why we put so much time and attention into ensuring they're prepared, so that you are getting the best from them on the day as well. So good stuff, excellent. Okay, right then, on to what stability looks like in continuous recruitment. So we often do talk about continuous recruitment, and we do have some excellent examples which we've touched on in terms of what stability looks like with this. So Preeti, what does this mean for schools in terms of continuous recruitment, and what does it look like once it's achieved?
I think the continuous recruitment is just always making sure that you're looking for good staff members, even if you don't necessarily have the role right now. you know, your agency might send you someone and you might think, oh, well, I don't have a gap right now, which is absolutely fine, but there's no harm in obviously meeting them and booking them in for maybe even a supply day, just so that you've got them in the background if something does come up. We understand that things are constantly changing in schools, but the last thing that we want is, you know, for schools to be sort of firefighting all the time. You should be in sync with your agency, so much so that, you know, the agency almost knows when you are going to have a gap. Or like, for example, I've got a school that said to me in June, oh, we're fine for staffing. And I said, well, this time last year you were fine. I said, but in September, you said to me that you needed four reception TAs to start. And I said, I have a feeling that this is going to happen this year. And I said, so over the summer, do you think I should just look for people with that sort of early years background, SEN experience? And she said, absolutely. And it was week 2. And she said, oh my goodness, I've now got 8 new children who have just joined, and I need one-to-ones for them. And, you know, that was reception cohort. And, you know, the poor children have come in and they didn't have any support. So I was very quickly able to sort of make sure that we already had people. And I actually had already sent the head teacher some people. And she just said, I'll have that one, that one, that one, that one. Can we book them all in for trials? And you know what? They're all there now and they're getting on really, really well. And they're doing absolutely fantastically. And she said to me, she said, thank God you actually already knew, because I didn't realize that last September we had that issue, because she wasn't the head teacher at that point. So I almost told her, I said, last September, the previous head teacher had already told me that. So we were already able to sort of make sure that that didn't happen this time round. And she was definitely not as stressed as she probably would have been had those children not have the support straight away. So I think having a steady pipeline is important. It's also makes your current staff members make sure that they don't feel overwhelmed, because when there's, you know, quite a lot of people leaving, coming and going, it does take a toll on your permanent staff members. And I think that's where you get them leaving, because there's too much change. There's too much change from the agency. There's different people coming in every day. And, you know, I wouldn't like that if I was working in a school. And I think, you know, staff members wouldn't like that, because they're having to repeat themselves over and over. So we want to minimize that, so that your current staff members are happy in their current roles as well. Also, just predicting staffing shortages. Like I touched on before, you know, we can generate any report. Your agency should be able to tell you. So your agency should come in, I'd say probably termly, and do a termly service review. And your agency should be able to pull up a report telling you when you book your staff more. It's not something that you will probably even consciously be aware of. You may not even notice it, that every Monday you have so-and-so calling in sick in blah, blah, blah class. You may not know that, but it's something that your agency should be able to give you the information on. So we've got every single report under the sun. You just need to ask your agencies for it. You know, we're able to say, you know, every Monday somebody is calling in sick in blah, blah, blah class. Is there an issue there? So it's something that you'll be able to discuss with your permanent members of staff, or put in somebody who maybe in a job share, they might be, you know, you might be able to then, you know, sort that out there. It just means that, you know, you've got less firefighting to do in the mornings, and that's what we want to achieve. We don't want it constantly, you know, I've got sicknesses, because like I said, it does take a toll on your permanent members of staff. If there are certain people calling in sick or taking time off when they probably shouldn't be taking the time off, because that will not only affect your staff but the pupils as well. And you know, it just means that if we can do that for you guys and give you the reports and give you the data, it means that we are able to put more reliable staff in, and it just means that you're firefighting less, and you can focus on the pupils. You can focus on, you know, your senior jobs that you're doing and running your establishment the way that you want to run it. I think that's the main thing for us, to just make sure that there's stability in your workforce, whether it's, you know, agency or your permanent staff members.
Absolutely. Good stuff. And just also apologies to everyone. I've just noticed my slide here is just a little bit skewed at the end there, but then that was where we were just talking about the firefighting. But I think, I think it's really important. That's what, when you talk there about the permanent members of staff and wanting to, you know, help them to have stability, and that comes with agency, you know, stability as well. I mean, anyone who has, you know, myself, I've got lots of my family members and friends that work in schools directly, work permanently with the school. I recruit for schools, and then we talk about agency staff when coming in, and you know, there is that, they know and understand there is going to be that churn, but then again, when there is that in and out, that could create, you know, a sort of bit of ambiguity, I suppose, for them as well, and they're not, you know, confident on when they're going to get that support. So again, by having that level of stability, it does help, we hope, relieve that stress for permanent members of staff when things can feel, you know, sort of overwhelming. There's a lot of work to do, there's changes in and out, and as much as, you know, more information they've got on who's coming in and what that looks like, again, the better. And it's about having that information that can really make the difference. So great stuff. Okay, right, so the core ingredients of stability, how to build it. So so we know what stability looks like. How do we get there? How can we build it? How can we achieve it, Preeti?
Yeah, so I think I touched on this before, but you know, we screen our candidates really well. We ask them loads of questions, there's lots of forms for them to sign out. We meet them in person, don't we, Marianne? Especially the candidates who can get to our office because we're local. We meet them in person. We, you know, really get to know what their motivations are. So that really, really helps. We, you know, I think some agencies probably won't tell you this, but we do encourage our staff to apply for the permanent, you know, vacancies. I have a school that love to hear about which candidates would like to go perm, and I encourage them. You know, I was just talking to my colleague about it today, and I said, you know, so-and-so school has asked them to apply for the permanent role. I said, I've got calls scheduled with all of them to go over their application forms to make sure that they're interviews, and we want to make sure that the candidates become, you know, a long-term member of your staff. We're not here to sort of make sure that you've got constant churn of candidates. That's not what we're here for. You know, I've got a school that, you know, has people from years ago who have gone perm, and I love going in and visiting them and seeing them in the class, and they're still there. And that's what we're here for. We're here to create that sort of stability. And we do keep in contact with our candidates, whether they're long-term through the agency or whether they've gone onto a permanent contract. We keep in contact with them to make sure that they're still happy, so that we can support them if for whatever reason they're not. We tailor the onboarding process depending on our schools. So depending on what the schools tell us, we tailor the onboarding process for them to make sure that it's specific to your establishment. So if you're you know, a huge trust of schools, we can put things in place so that the candidates are more prepared for when they come into your schools. If you need people with certain experiences or certain criteria, we can do that as well. If you need to make sure that they've done a certain training, you know, I know, for example, we've run team teach training for one of my trusted schools, and we did it specifically for them over the summer holidays because they didn't have time to put them through the team teach training, so we ran it ourselves. We got someone in from Team Teach and we ran the training for that trust of schools. And I think that's what you need. You need that partnership with your agency to make sure that they are doing the things that you necessarily don't have time for. You don't have time for that. Pass it over to your agency for them to do. We don't mind. You know, it just means that the candidates are prepared when they come in. I think also the communication needs to be really good. Not sure if I touched on this, but feedback is so important. You know, we don't need constant communication where you're talking to your agency every day. You know, I have a lovely SEN primary school that I work with, and I know that I can catch her every Tuesday afternoon at so-and-so time. We've got time, you know, a rough time sort of penciled in the diary that we catch up weekly, and then we just do everything else by email. And then every term she knows I'm going to ask her to come in and I'll go in and do a service review. I know everything about the courses, I know everything about the types of students that they have in that establishment. And it just means that there's communication. I always say, you know, you don't have to tell me if every candidate is fantastic, but if there is something and you need us to give feedback, please feed it back to me and don't just stay quiet. It's really, really important, you know, not just for your establishment, but also for the candidates, so that they don't go to another school and do that again. But we need to make sure that there is feedback. But, you know, we've got loads of those you know, things in place where no news is good news. I think a lot of schools use that phrase, and we do say if you don't have the time, that's absolutely fine, but it's great to get feedback from the schools, because we do like to get feedback from candidates as well. The candidates will always tell us whether they've had a lovely day, and we always tend to sort of pass it over to the schools as well. And then I think one of the important things is culture. So we obviously, you know, the culture that we've got at Envision, we try to instill it in our candidates as well. You know, so our core values are, you know, making sure that we're positive all the time. You've got accountability, whether you're there for one day a week, a term, a year. You need to be accountable for the day that you've gone in. You need to work as a team.
Yeah.
You know, you need to respect your team members. And I think, you know, if we're instilling that in our candidates, we want that to obviously show when the candidates are in school. So just, you know, making sure that we're supporting the candidates and, you know, they know what they need to be doing daily. And I think the last thing is, you know, ask your agencies if they can put something in place like an SLA. So we'll show you that on the next slide, but it's a service level agreement. So don't be afraid to ask your agencies for that. You know, we've put it in place for quite a lot of our schools. So we've got an agreement in place with them where we will do certain things for them in a certain time period. We will ask for feedback on these days, or, you know, we will present them with suitable candidates within a certain time frame. Don't be afraid to ask your agencies for that, and they shouldn't hesitate to give you that, because it's really, really important that you know what you're getting from the service. You can't sort of be guessing what you're going to get from your agency. It needs to be very clear, and it needs to be very consistent, regardless of, you know, whether your consultant is off sick. You know, the other person that's covering should know that you have an SLA in place, and this is what the service should be. So do not be afraid to ask your agencies for that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll go on to that example there then that you mentioned. Here we go. So yeah, Preeti, if you could just tell us then a bit about these sort of two you know, snippets, of course, of documents that we've got in terms of SLA. So I believe the first one you can see there, the agreement for temporary and permanent staffing, that's for a trust that we partnered with, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yeah, so there's a trust of schools that I work with, and they've got 9 campuses around sort of southwest London. And the first year I started working with them, lo and behold, they were working with about 14 agencies, and I was shocked when they told me 14 agencies, and they had 24 or 25 permanent vacancies for September. And I was just absolutely shocked, and I thought, why is this happening? So I went in, and what I did was I spent the whole day there, as you do. So I went from each campus to each campus, and I met with SLT in each campus, and I got a real good feel for the culture. I you know, noted down every single class that they had the vacancies for, and then what I did was I visited every single class that they had the vacancies for. Over the summer holidays, I recruited for all of those classes. I think out of the 24 or 25, I think I filled 22 vacancies, which, to be honest, is, you know, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that we've got 100% fill rate. You know, I would love that, and I'd love to be perfect, but not everybody is perfect. We're only human, and we can run out of people, and your agency should tell you if they run out of people. They should never ever just send somebody for the sake of sending them. They need to be the right candidate, and if you don't have the right candidate, we just won't send them in. So we put together we're on a PSL with them, and what we've done is I've sort of outlined, you know, the fact that we love working with them, and they are still working with us today. You know, we've got set charge rates in place. They know what they're getting. You know, we've got a service agreement where I go internally and I check how the candidates are getting on, and then also further down in the service level agreement is that I will obviously support them with their permanent staff members as well. So what I do is I make sure that the candidates are suitable for their long-term staff, and that they can go into a permanent contract as well. So that's something really important. And then we've got another one in place with another SEN school, and here we can see that, you know, I respond to all of their emails within a certain time frame. Anyone that works with me probably knows that I respond at every time of the day. 6:30, night, middle of the night, whenever you need. But you should have that in place with your agency. You need to know that if you're communicating with them, that
absolutely. And I think that really highlights it, because it means that we both, you know, both parties understand, and I think that's really, again, has been the theme throughout this. I'm just conscious here we've got about a minute and a half left, because we literally, Preeti and I could talk about this all day, every day, and I think leading into our key takeaways here that we'll just kind of briefly run through. We're not going to have time for questions today, but we are going to come to you directly after this to, you know, invite you to ask us any questions. But I think, you know, finishing up there on talking about the service level agreement and PSLs, that summarizes and has that agreement of what the expectations are from both sides, and it really is what the ultimate sort of goal is in terms of then when we start working in sync, we build a relationship, and then we get stability. So Preeti, if you just want to fly through then the key takeaways from today, that would be amazing.
Yeah, I think the main thing is just making sure that you're in sync with your agency and that you're in a partnership with them, And one of my schools always says to me, it seems that I'm just sitting there with them in the office, just doing everything. So your agency should be an extension of your staff members that are organising your staffing. Your agency should know everything about your school. And I think if you can take away one thing from this, make sure that your agency is a partner for you, and they're an extension of you.
And that makes it a bit easier for you, and then the best outcome for pupils. That's exactly it. Fabulous. And I can certainly say that's exactly what Preeti is to her schools that she works with as well, which is why it's been so great to talk through this today. Thank you so much, Preeti, for joining this with me. Of course, we don't have time for the Q&As here. Please get in touch with Preeti on here and leave us some feedback. Thank you.